I'm at Ellesmere Port. This was once planned to link to the Llangollen Canal and the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct. Carry on watching to find out more. I'm back. This is the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct and it is huge. 126 feet high at the highest point. Makes it the tallest canal aqueduct in the world. It's over 1,000 feet long, which makes it the longest aqueduct in the UK, a navigable one anyway. But I'm not here to see this again. Now, we've been here recently and I covered this last year. So why am I here? Now, I've touched on before that this canal was part of a much larger network that was planned to go from here and carry on. They got to these colossal structures like the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct and the Stok Cae Aqueduct, and then they had to stop. But let's go to the top of the aqueduct now and find out why. So the aqueduct itself was built by William Jessup and Thomas Telford, two absolute canal legends. And it came up to this point here. Now this is, behind me, the branch for the Llangollen Canal. But that was never the intended terminus of this canal. So the idea was this was going to be the central part of a much larger canal, which would have connected all the way up to Ellesmere Port. It wasn't called that at the time, the area was called Whitby, and the idea was to connect this canal from the Severn at Shrewsbury through to the River Dee and then onwards to the Mersey, connecting some of the biggest rivers in the country. So they actually started work on the sections further up. They built these amazing structures behind, but they never actually carried on. Where they did get to was here, and this is Trefor Basin, which is just above the aqueduct. It's only just behind us, and this would have taken the canal further on. There is a slight bit of canal that came off of here, which is just up ahead, which is called the Plas Kynaston, which goes off to a chemical works just over sort of there, which is now long abandoned. So before Horseshoe Falls was a thing, the idea was to take water from further up from an area called FFrwd, and the branch would have come down. That would have been a branch off the main line. There'd have been a reservoir up there which would have collected water from a river in that area. Now they actually started building that section, but they didn't carry on. And the reason for that was basically the Napoleonic Wars caused high inflation, and it became too expensive to carry on building this canal, especially when other sections could have been done to take the route to the same way anyway. And this here, as you can see, a little bridge going across here, and this would have taken the Plas Kynaston section of the canal up through. So this canal would have then led on to Wrexham, and around Wrexham, where there would have been a branch just north of Wrexham, and then off towards Chester, and then you would have gone on to what is now Shropshire Union main line up to Ellesmere Port. I think it was going to carry pretty much the same route. So the canal was then due to come through a place called Llangollen before it came up and around Wrexham. Wrexham was a lot different then. Just for reference, this is the Wrexham Ground, the turf pub, which is quite famous now because of the TV programme. Deadpool and Rob have bought the club, and there's a Disney series following the club as they rise back up through the leagues. It's actually really good. But if you go sort of a mile, maybe a mile and a half, sort of northwest of here, which is in the direction ahead of us, was the junction in a place called Portsmouth. And at Portsmouth, it would have carried on going up towards Chester and split off for the FFrwd arm of the canal, which we'll jump over to now and start having a look at. So we've jumped over to a place called Pontcysyllte, and I'm on a road called Llangollen Canal, which is Welsh for Canal Road. And this wasn't here back when the canal was there, and so this road has basically been built on the line of the canal. So this section has been lost. One thing you can see here is that it's raised up onto like an embankment across the back of this school here, and this would have been the canal line running directly through there, and then coming across to here, this would have been somewhere where this big tree is now. The canal would have gone through here. So this canal was first authorised in 1793. And the original plan was to run it at 320 feet above sea level, just like the other side of the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct. But this would have required a tunnel that was about 2 miles long. So they actually changed plans a little bit later on, and they came up the FFrwd Valley and to go to the industries up here. And there was a plan to have a reservoir at the end here. So again, we'll be on the canal line here again. You can see the embankment at the back of this sports centre here. And then if we jump across into this field here, you're going to see the first visible remains of the canal. Now the section behind us was largely built on. It was abandoned a long time ago. The railways came up here and built on sections, which we'll see as we go through the video. But the majority of the line was just abandoned because it wasn't needed when the canal didn't come. Now they reckon there were some boats on here at some point, but it wasn't used by mainline traffic. It was never connected. And this over here is the line. I'm just going to drop into that field now and follow up. So here we go. This would have been the canal, and you can see the embankment coming away from the sports fields over here, and you can see the kind of overgrowth up in here. Let's see if we can jump up into this section. I don't know if any of the bed exists or if it's just the embankment left. Things tend to fill up over the years, but you can feel it's kind of boggy ground here. Would have gone right through along that line of brambles over there. So in May 1796, a contract was let out for all this section, and they started digging. Now they chose this section to start with because there was a lot of industry up through here, coal and ironworks and stuff like that. And they wanted to have a basin at each end of the bit that was dug, right down to sort of behind us in the village of Pontcysyllte. And the idea was they could move the goods down and then take it by horse and cart while the rest of the canal was being built. But obviously that never happened due to the inflation of the Napoleonic Wars. Work was abandoned in just after 2 years in June 1798. And in here, look, you can actually see what looks like a bank up through there. Now, as I said, this did have a life. It did carry some goods for a local landowner who purchased the canal line off of the Ellesmere Canal Company after it was abandoned. But it didn't serve for very long, and there are rumours that it was maybe just one boat going up and down. Despite this quite tall embankment here, the canal was abandoned after spending £9,135 building the about 2 1/3 to 3 miles that they actually built. And a lot of it's been lost since. Behind us has been built on, and up ahead, just here, you can see the end of the embankment here, and then the fields just there. So we're going to jump over to there in a second and pick up the rest of the video. So just over there is where we just were on the end of that embankment, and then if you turn around here, away from that field, you've got this, and this is quite a cool section. Probably the best section on the canal. Unfortunately, we can't go in there, it's private land. But I've got some good drone footage here. So if you can see it here, look, you can see the embankment on either side as you're running through. So the canal bed is still there. They've just knocked this end out, basically, to get the road. There would have originally been a bridge in behind the road where I am now. Lots changed over the years over here. So on this footage here, you can see the tree line of the canal in the middle, and to the right is another tree line. That is the Wrexham Mould and Connors Quay Railway. And the railway took up part of this canal. A bit further down where these houses were built, you can see them just kind of on the edge of the railway line there. The canal came close to those, and the railway came across at the angle of those houses. Those houses were built on the old line, basically. And the canal and the railway intersected at the next bit we'll jump to now. So let's go over and have a look. So here we are on the next lane. You lose the canal just over kind of that direction over there. So I'm not too sure. I think it's the higher tree line over there. So that's been sort of filled in and would have come across the road here. There would have been a bridge here. I'm not too sure if any of this stone walling here is anything to do with an old bridge. Could possibly be. And then you had the railway came across here. And what happened is they actually crossed over each other just over in this field. So you can see this is actually the old railway embankment here. This is where the trains would have run up towards the ironworks in the colliery, and the canal would have come across here and then crossed across the railway and then a tight angle and then back across. And the railway obviously had to take a much longer sweeping route around with the canal to have like a sharp turn. So most of this bit here has vanished because it was built on by the railway. So we've just come from over there. Look, that's the tree line there of the railway, and then this is literally a dead straight line down the canal, which we're on now. Again, this section's been infilled, but it hasn't a bit further on. So when researching this video, it was really hard. There is absolutely nothing about this canal online. It was never really documented because it wasn't kept. It wasn't abandoned, sort of with railways coming. It was just never built. It was never finished. So I am hopeful that what I'm saying is correct. I've studied a lot of old maps and stuff to try and find my way through this, but hopefully in a second we'll find some canal. And I wasn't wrong, here we go. You can clearly see it here. Here is the canal, so we'd be in the bed right now. Towpath looks like it was up here, and this is a section that survived the railway. So we'll walk on down now to quite an industrial area, just a bit further down here, which used to have a load of, there was collieries and stuff. There was ironworks, coal works, brickworks, a lot, as well as lots of railways, including the GWR, who had lines there. It doesn't get much clearer than that. That is definitely a canal. It's a shame really, because this would have been a lovely area to bring boats up. That pesky Frenchman caused lots of problems. The Whale Arun was a canal that was completed a year after the Napoleonic Wars ended, which defeated the purpose of the canal, because it was built to take goods down to the south coast and take them away from the sea, basically. That left that canal pretty much in ruins almost straight away, because it just had no purpose anymore. So there's obviously no restoration trust for this one, so this is fully an abandoned canal. Much like Leominster, it's a canal that I wanted to cover because there's so little about it. I've been researching for a little while, but I got asked by a viewer to cover this. I was in the area, so I had a massive binge yesterday to try and put it all together. It's actually still holding water in places. This has got quite a bit in here actually. I know we've had a lot of rain recently. It's just kind of a bit of a pond now. It looks like it's been partially blocked up here, just up ahead. There's quite solid stuff down in here as well, which I assume is part of the old towpath. This canal would have come directly across through this gap here. You can just see over the other side here, I think that's the old railway lines. That's the Wrexham mould and Plas Kynaston mineral line. So it's a branch off of the main line, like I said, it came off back there. And you can see it's getting closer and closer to the canal here, again, which is full of water. And that eventually comes across and joins and goes onto the canal bed then, right where there were some mines and some shafts and stuff down there. I'm not sure how much access we're going to get to that section, but there won't be any canal left there anyway. So here we go, this is where we're going to lose it. There's the embankment there for the railway, some steps leading up to it there, and this now cuts across the canal and ends the canal for now. So just through the trees there you can see that white house and the red brick buildings. That was originally the ironworks, coal works and brickworks on the side as well. That's just off of Foundry Lane. So the railway, which covers this section of canal now, that's the end of it just over there, would have originally have split a bit further back, and there would have been a line into there, a line carrying on down here. There would have been a Great Western line down through there, coming around and coming on a slightly different route. So down there is where we've just come from. It's quite steep down there, and the railway would have split off just here again. The canal is just over there, railway down through, and another line up through here and underneath here. Now you can see what is the edge of a bridge here on both sides, and this I imagine would have been a steel girder bridge, because if you look further down you've got another section just over there. So in this section here would have been steel girders across with the railway underneath, and that's been backfilled by looks of it in that garden as well. It's quite cool to see these still in place really. So once upon a time just here would have been part of the GWR railway. That would have gone across this house here, over there where there would have been some girder bridges going over the other lines in the canal, and then this would have been a level crossing here, and the house just up in there was the level crossing house. So the railway would have run directly where the blue car is over there and towards the garage here, towards that tree. And then the canal itself would have kind of run down the side here and picked up over here. And if you look here you can see what was part of a railway bridge across. They had a girder bridge, and they originally would have carried a canal here as well. I'm not too sure if it's the same structure or not. The embankment goes quite a lot higher up above here. The canal could have possibly been a lot lower. You just see sort of the walls here, look, as it steps up, and then up to that big embankment up there, and a more impressive wall on this side. So that then led down to Llangollen Canal Basin, which I'll try and get to from a different direction. So just walking away from here now, we've got some other buildings in the side here. The railway was literally just behind us there on that corner. And here's what was the remains of an old inn. So it was the old FFrwd Inn. I don't know when it was abandoned. It would have been quite an impressive place, look. Places for your horses, look, stables and stuff as well. Not too sure if it was used as a farm after. There's some young cattle in here. So somewhere up here would have been the canal basin. It's actually a little bit hard to find. There's no accurate map showing where it could be. But I have found a couple of things here, look. So just on the floor down here is some sort of stonework. And that's possibly part of a trail, like a track up to the canal basin. And then we've got just over here a what looks like maybe a mine shaft. Not too sure. Round building long since abandoned. And a raised bit of ground up here. So I think the canal basin was just in this sort of area here. And actually, if you look down here, that might be a good sign. So it looks like there's a bit of a depression over here. Oh, we've got water. I think this is the basin here. So that brown building could have been anything really. It could have been something to do with cranes or something, I'm not too sure. It definitely looks like it's some sort of shaft, kind of what you see on a railway. This is really boggy. I think we're actually in the basin now, look, because there's a raised wall all the way around here. And there's lots of water into there as well. Looks like water running in as well. But like I said, this wasn't the end of the canal, not the planned end of the canal anyway. This was the terminus, but they did plan to carry on. And the idea was that they were going to run basically ahead of us from here, run back onto the road we were just on, underneath, back up another lane, around, and it was going to circle its way up until it met a river where it was going to take a feed from. That obviously never happened, and the feed came from Horseshoe Falls on the River Dee outside Llangollen. So let's take a little jump across now to Chester, where the canal would have ran to. That is now part of the Shropshire Union Canal. It was originally the Ellesmere Canal as well. And we'll have a little look there and go across to Ellesmere Port. So here's the Chester Canal, and the Chester Canal was opened in 1779. Now the idea was to link the River Dee with Middlewich behind us and a branch to Nantwich. So they wanted to connect into the Trent and Mersey, but they didn't want them to. So they struggled with connections to the other end, and to add to that, the River Dee company didn't want them to go into the river either. But this is Northgate Staircase Lock. This is the top of the 3 locks. And as you look on down through, you can see it's straight into the next lock and onwards down towards the railway. You can see just how quickly they go down, and that's the advantage of a staircase lock. So when you've got to drop the water level very quickly in a short space of time, you can do it. The second advantage of a staircase lock is you use less gates. So yeah, trouble was faced right from the start. The Chester Canal Company had all sorts of issues, and they really struggled as a company to survive. And in fact, when the locks at Beeson collapsed, they were left in a situation where they couldn't really continue. They only stayed afloat by selling assets like boats and stuff, which kept them going. So there was some hope of when in the 1790s that the Ellesmere Canal Company decided to run their canal through this area, because it meant that the canal, which ended just up ahead of us here, could then be connected to the wider network. They got offered several times to be brought out, but they managed to survive basically just by sort of selling stuff. Fate eventually did go well for them, and they started making a profit and paying off debts that they had incurred, but they eventually did unite under one banner. Work then began on this section of the canal in 1793, and it was finished by 1st July 1795. The locks connecting it to the River Mersey were completed earlier the following year. The line's 8.75 miles long, and it was supplied by water from the Chester Canal, as well as pumps at the Mersey pumping water in. The connection to the Llangollen Canal and the Trefor basin, which would have pretty much gone in a straight line here, and then gone down towards and followed the route that we've already discussed. And then when it got through to a bit further down, it would have come to Frankton Junction, which was on the Montgomery Canal. Just as you came onto that canal, there was another arm that came down, and that would have become the main route down to Shrewsbury to join the River Severn. Just over there, we've got Telford's warehouse, which is quite cool. You can see where the boats could have gone underneath, just in there to unload and load. I've just had some food in there, it's quite nice. And if you come across down here, it locks down over there, and then you come into this. And this is the connection to the River Dee, which then locks down into some basins, which were the old town basins. There was quite a big port in Chester at one point, a very busy part of the network. The River Dee company realised that they needed to connect in, so they eventually allowed connections into the river. They owned all the land down, which meant they could charge tolls for entrance into the river, which is where they got the money from. They were originally worried that they were going to lose traffic on their river navigation because of the canal network. This is now just a mooring basin. You can see the lock over here is chained off just on the top there, so there is no more navigation down to the river. I don't know if there is a possibility they could ever open it up. I guess it would need to be dredged and stuff first, but these locks haven't been operated in a very long time. They don't even seal. Look, just behind those trees there, you've got an old round tower. It's quite a famous picture down here with some boats in here, with that in the background. I think this was abandoned for some time, and it was restored, and again the water was able to be in front of it. But just down here would have been where the dock was. And all of this is obviously a new build on the side here. And this would have been much, much bigger. Huge, in fact, compared to what it is now. And all that traffic from the River Dee would have come up here and then try and ship through to get onto the canal network. So you would have come under here into this, which I believe is just a floodgate here. So you can see the levels are quite high at the moment. You can see on here, I don't know if you can in the light, but the water has been up to about there today. So this ticked off many boxes. So it ticked off the connection to the River Mersey, which we'll go to now. It ticked off the River Dee, but never ticked off the Shrewsbury link. So up to Ellesmere now. Now the canal companies merged in 1813, and the Chester Canal became sort of the middle part of a much larger network, which turned quite profitable. And I can't actually go much further than this. They're closed off. Guinness are filming here apparently, and the wind's quite bad, so there's not a huge amount of drone footage from here either. So when they merged, they became the Ellesmere and Chester Canal, and then the Birmingham-Liverpool Junction Canal was proposed in 1826, which provided the link to Nantwich finally. The company saw it as an opportunity to build a Middlewich branch, which would provide a connection to Manchester. That opened in 1833, and the Junction Canal opened in 1835. They then all merged in 1845 to be the Ellesmere and Chester Canal. Then the following year it was the Shropshire Union Railways and Canal Company, and eventually after nationalisation in 1948 it was the Shropshire Union. So this is a massive area, and it links down onto the Manchester Ship Canal, which we'll jump to in a second, just over there. And when the Manchester Ship Canal came, it provided another massive opportunity for this canal to make money. So the Chester Canal in particular became a very, very poor canal that had lost a lot of money to suddenly becoming part of a massive, much more affluential network. So we're on the Manchester Ship Canal now, which is where all of this drops into. Now this is, when it was opened by Queen Victoria, it was the largest ship canal in the world, and it goes for 36 miles, and it's privately owned by Peel companies, Peel Holdings I think they're called, and obviously operates between, well, further down here and to Manchester. Now it cuts a few canals. There's the canal down at Llangollen, which is now trying to get a connection back in. I think they lost their connection when this was built. And then obviously this canal does connect in just here, look. And you can see just down there a massive ship just loading now, and they've got a crane taking something out of there, I'm not too sure what. But this, if you time it right, you'll have huge sort of ocean-going vessels just sort of coming past all the time. So I didn't know we could get around here, but a security guard just told me, so we can have a little look, probably a better look at the port from this side. It's typical. Of all the weekends I could have come up, I chose the one where they're filming a Guinness advert. Never mind. So you can see some quite big lock gates on here. They're rotten, they're obviously not used anymore. But they would have just been there. You see they go each way. So one would have been owned by the ship company, one would have been owned by the canal company, and that would have stopped each company stealing water. This looks like a bit of a transshipment basin, as there is a swing bridge just up ahead there with a lock coming down into this dock here. So it looks like only the top basins are closed. You can see just how big these are. They're not really used, there's a few boats in here. But being a private ship company sort of on the actual ship canal, I think it's quite hard sort of getting out onto there. You've got to apply for a licence, and I don't think you can go on your own steam. I think you've got to be taken out. You do it on a lot of rivers and stuff as well. So I've got another reason to hate Napoleon. It would have been amazing if this had all been connected and we'd have had another canal coming up from North Wales up to Ellesmere Port. But I think it's pretty cool what's here anyway. And it's nice sometimes to explore these things that are completely abandoned. Ellesmere Port obviously changed its name. It incorporated quite a lot of villages in the end. And it took its name from the town of Ellesmere, where the canal meets a bit further down. So this became the port. It was Port of Ellesmere to start with, and then it became Ellesmere Port much later. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a hard one to research this, and I want to thank canalworld.net, who are a forum. I found some threads on there, and there was more info in those two sort of pages that they had been talking about a few years back. And I found anywhere online, but it gave a really good basis to research this video and try and find some of the stuff that I found. So if you've explored it and you know some bits I've missed, please let me know in the comments. It'd be great to hear what you found. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day.